if they are not recorded truthfully, then the deliberations details will not be available for posterity to see and go into what kind of scrutiny the particular subject was subjected to. So that's how in the financial sector. Another part that is important for the board is to have a risk management architecture for the bank. That is approved by the board, risk management architecture. That means the board of directors is at the apex level, then audit committee of the board, various committees are there, then there is a chief risk officer in every financial institution, duly appointed by the board, who will be answerable to the board. So this kind of architecture has to be put in place by the board so that they can look into various aspects without diluting their own functions. So these things, certain things are, I must tell you about, corporate governance is one area which is prescribed by the regulator, RBI, to be commented upon in the annual report of the board. Annual report of the board must have some material on the risk management part of this corporate governance. It must also indicate how many times the board has met, how many times the committees have met. That in brief has to come out in the annual report of every financial institution. That is a regulatory requirement. So this is how at present the risk management architecture is. But as I said in the beginning, it is an evolving concept. It is not a static concept. It's a dynamic concept. As certain institutions face certain difficult times or certain things go wrong, then it has to be revisited. Corporate governance, what kind of policy was evolved, what kind of principles were followed, with what result. So this, ladies and gentlemen, would be the beginning of a journey on corporate governance. How it comes through in the coming years, how it gets strengthened in the financial sector and other business organizations. The last word is yet to be written on this. I'm sure that these 2 days deliberation has made a beginning, made everybody think about on the subject, and I'm sure that something good will come out of the deliberations that you had during the previous 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your perspectives and insights on strengthening corporate governance. May I now request Dr. R.F.I. Smith, our guest of honor, to share his thoughts of this audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rana, distinguished guests, Professor Mishra. First of all, I have a confession to make. I'm not a proper corporate governance person. I've come into this field as a bit of an amateur because of my primary interest in public sector management and public governance. And the reason why I was so happy to accept the invitation from Professor Mishra on behalf of the IPE and the Waikato School of Management was that in our country, at least Australia, there seems to be a convergence between issues in public governance and private governance, and therefore corporate governance is a moving feast. As Mr. Rana, as Mr. Lal has said, the final word on this subject has not been written. In some ways, the intersection of public governance and corporate governance is still awaiting the first most significant words to be written. So that's my confession. As I've been a participant in the conference, I thought one of the things I could do is just give some reflections upon what makes a good conference. The first issue is, what are the questions like? And I think on this count, this conference is very good because it stirred up a lot of questions. The second point that comes out is connections. what are the connections that people are making, not only with issues and ideas and abstract concepts and empirical material and arguments about whether this test should be applied or that test should be applied. It's also a matter of how do people connect with each other. And what I've been impressed with here is the enthusiasm and energy of so many young women and young men, as well as us old blokes. And in this respect, I can see that Indian scholarship and international scholarship is in very good hands. The third aspect that I think one needs to inquire about of a conference is, are there plenty of grounds for further inquiry? Scholars always want to specify that there's more research. Well, I think there's more research and more research and more research. And to take just one example, in the final session in this room chaired by Professor Gumran and Dr. Gita, it was remarked that a lot of people presented some very interesting empirical material on corporate social responsibility as evidenced by Indian companies over quite a long period of time. I was really excited by this, thinking there have been a lot of good stories told. There would have been even longer stories told had we had more time. But I say to the people who felt frustrated, you know you've got a good story. You now know that we know you've got a good story, so keep writing it and telling it. Finally, with a conference, there's the question of sponsorship and hospitality. And in this regard, I think the conference is a model. I think the IPE, in partnership with Waikato, has done a marvellous thing. It has brought not only people from India and other parts of South Asia together, has also stilled the conflict between the warring tribes of New Zealand and Australia, and has also recognised, given our little part of the world some recognition as some possibility of making a contribution to your rather larger part of the world. And the reason why I personally am grateful for this is that one of the very big challenges facing not only New Zealand but also Australia is how to take the next steps in deepening our relationships, commercial, social and governmental, with this part of the world. So the conference thus provides not only excellent sponsorship but excellent diplomacy. And then there is the minor question of hospitality. I am an Indian food tragic, but I can say that the food provided by the hostelries and hotels has been nothing short of magnificent. The only way I could really express my gratitude would be to use Australian language, which, given the differences between Australian English and Indian English, I will forbear from doing. So, in conclusion, thank you Waikato, thank you IPE, thank you everyone at IPE, and thank you Dr. Mishra for orchestrating the lot. Thank you indeed.
In fact, we've had very nice interactions with Professor Smith. And now, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your reflections on this conference and your experience. Let me now request Dr. Padam to speak a few words to our audience.
Dr. Mishra and the distinguished panelists and friends. I'm indeed happy to come here essentially as an academician and as a political scientist. This is a subject which is of great importance to us. But I think in the context in which we are placed, the present economic and social context, it is essential that we should talk about the various things. And this is where I would like to refer to Mr. Lal's statement that it is still evolving and it will continue to evolve. Because depending on the context in which we are talking, either the economic or social situation in the country. Now, there can be several views on this. And I only wanted to tell before you, a couple of years ago, perhaps the most provocative statement was made by an industrialist, saying that I have no social responsibility. I have corporate responsibility. I pay my taxes. I pay well for my employees. I treat my customers well. I give the quality goods. Don't ask me for social responsibility. If you want those things, go to government. You are elected a government. There's a chief minister, there's a prime minister. Now you ask them what are they doing about social issues. Now I know it's highly provocative and also highly one-sided as it one appears. But sometimes I think we need to reflect on this, saying that what are the responsibilities of a public agency, what are the responsibilities of private agency. Professor Lakshman Narayan is sitting here, he wrote so much on this. We began after independence with a huge involvement in public sector, the socialistic pattern of society of which Nehru was talking. Now, the essential reason why we went for this is, one perhaps was there was not much of a private supply, but the second is the realization on the part of the government that you cannot achieve development unless there are certain goals also are there which are put into the whole process of industry and industrialization and the entire thing. And you look at the first 20 years, again I would like to come to Mr. Lal being from the biggest bank. The kind of things which these banks have done over a period of time, and the kind of industries that we have created. The other day, somebody was telling me from the in Bhilai steel plant, the central school in Bhilai steel plant, which brings in some 140 students in the 12th class. 30 students are automatically going into the IITs. Now, what I am saying is that a lot was done at one particular. They did not know perhaps that they were doing corporate social responsibility. They were not talking about corporate governance. But the entire thing came at a stage when we thought that we should liberalize. Now, liberalization means regulation. Regulation means you got to put certain standards on it. Now, I do not want to take away from the industry their ability to stretch themselves and be corporate citizens. Now, my only worry is that if we put everything into the statute, and we are very clever and we know how to circumvent the statute. So what is required in kind of corporate governance, corporate social responsibility is that this is that we are corporate citizens. Then we must see what are the kind of responsibilities we can fulfill. I'll give you one example. There are a large number of companies, I do not want to whether it is Wipro or Infosys and others which have done a tremendous amount of work. As a teacher of industrial relations, I found that this outsourcing which has taken place has enslaved a large number of people within the outsourced or contract thing. Now you have somebody who is earning 2 million rupees as a salary, but the fellow who is serving tea to him is hardly paid 1,000 rupees a month. But the company says, I have no responsibility towards that. Now, we got to also examine what are the corporate responsibilities within the organization. Who is working for you? How are you paying them? What is the kind of security that you have employed? We started off with a huge public sector where we will provide you schools, we will provide you hospitals, we will provide you housing, we provide everything. But today we are talking about the cost to company. Now, how do you bring in this whole? We still do not have a safety net. So the idea is that we can discuss about corporate social responsibility at one end of the corporate sector, saying that what are your responsibilities, what are you going to do to the country. But at the other end, I think those of us who are academicians, who are corporate leaders, will have to think of what are those responsibilities that you would fulfill in terms of people who are working for you, who may not be your employees, in terms of people to whom you have established an industry outside or a factory in a rural area, where they do not have the skills to get employed here. And today that is one of the major problems in our country. You are saying that I go into a tribal area and then set up an industry. But how many of those tribals are educated enough to get employed in your organization? I think these are the kind of major responsibilities that are come. I think government cannot be a passive spectator. I'm glad that We have had excellent discussions. I sat through presentations on this, and I hope the discussion on this will continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words, insightful and thought-provoking. Let us now invite Shri M.S. Rana, CMD, SPMCIL, the chief guest of the occasion, to share his thoughts and enlighten us.